My name is Lori Bacon, and I was 36 years old the day I learned how quickly a normal afternoon can turn into a line you never uncross. It was a Thursday just after 5, the kind of hour where the house usually fills with noise, shoes kicked off, the refrigerator opening, Ava talking a mile a minute about her day. But when the front door opened, none of that happened. Ava came in quietly, her backpack sliding down one shoulder. She didn't look tired or cranky. She looked off, like she was trying to keep herself together by sheer force of will. She walked straight to the couch and sat down, pulling out her homework as if routine alone could keep something from spilling over. That's when I saw her face. One cheek was red, too red, uneven, already swelling. And once I really looked, I couldn't unsee it, the faint outline of fingers. My mind scrambled ahead of my heart. Maybe she fell. Maybe she ran into something. Maybe I was wrong. I sat beside her, close enough to feel the tension in her body. "Ava," I said softly. She didn't look at me. She stared at her math folder like it might save her. Then she spoke, 5 words, flat, careful. "Uncle Brad hit me." Everything inside me went quiet. I didn't react, I didn't interrupt, I just waited. She took a breath. "He said I was showing off because I got an A, and Jordan didn't." Brad, my sister Megan's husband, the man I'd never liked but had tolerated for years, the man who always needed to be right, always needed to be in charge, always had something smug to say about kids these days being too sensitive. I'd seen him roll his eyes when Ava talked about school. I'd noticed how he whispered to Jordan and laughed when Ava wasn't looking. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was being dramatic. I was wrong. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't even raise my voice. I stood up, took out my phone, and started taking pictures. Her cheek, under her chin, where the redness was already darkening. Then her shoulder, there it was, a bruise forming, like someone had grabbed her too hard. She watched me nervously. "Am I in trouble?" she asked. That question cut deeper than the bruise. "No," I said immediately. "You did nothing wrong. Ever." She hesitated. "Is Aunt Megan going to be mad at me?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know the truth yet. I grabbed my keys and took her straight to urgent care. No calls, no explanations, just action. The nurse's expression shifted the second she saw Ava's face. The doctor spoke quietly, professionally. They documented everything. Used words like suspected abuse and non-parental guardian. I nodded through it all, my hands steady even though something inside me was burning. On the drive home, Ava asked again if she was in trouble. I told her no. Over and over. She fell asleep clutching my arm that night, like she was afraid I might disappear if she let go. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Child Protective Services. I gave them Brad's full name, Megan's address, and Ava's statement. The second was to a family lawyer a friend had recommended. She listened quietly, then said she'd be at my house the next morning. The third was to someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year, a former neighbor who now worked in law enforcement. I didn't ask for favors. I asked for procedure. I asked how to make sure this didn't get brushed aside. By the 3rd day, I got the call. CPS had already interviewed Ava at school. An emergency home visit was scheduled for Megan and Brad's house that afternoon. Around 5 o'clock, I heard shouting outside. I stepped onto my porch and saw Brad on his front lawn, barefoot, in pajama pants, on his knees, crying, not yelling, begging. Megan stood behind him, pacing, her hands shaking around her phone. Brad saw me across the street. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I didn't say a word. I just watched. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The morning after Brad collapsed on the front lawn, my phone stayed silent longer than I expected. No apology, no explanation, no desperate message asking what they could do to fix this. Just quiet. It didn't last. Around 10, there was a knock at my door. Sharp, uncertain. Like whoever was on the other side hadn't decided whether they deserved to be there. I opened it, and Megan stood in front of me. She looked smaller somehow. No makeup, hair shoved into a messy tie, a hoodie pulled tight around her like armor she hadn't had time to adjust. She didn't say hello. She just stepped inside and stopped in the middle of my living room, eyes darting like she wasn't sure where she was allowed to stand. I didn't invite her to sit. She finally spoke. "Is it true?" I waited. "Did Ava really say Brad hit her?" Her voice cracked. "Did he actually do that?" "Yes," I said. One word, no cushion, no anger, just truth. She stared at me, blinking like she was trying to translate the language I was speaking. "There has to be some mistake," she said weakly. "Brad gets frustrated sometimes, sure, but he wouldn't hit a child. He might have been joking. Maybe Ava misunderstood." I turned away from her and walked to the kitchen drawer. When I came back, I handed her the envelope. Printed photos, timestamps visible, the red mark, the bruise forming on Ava's shoulder, the urgent care report clipped neatly behind them. Megan didn't sit down. She flipped through the photos standing up, her hands starting to tremble halfway through. She stopped on the last image and just stared. "I don't even know who he is anymore," she whispered. I didn't say anything. I let the silence do the work. She finally looked up. "Why didn't you come to me first?" That hurt, not because she asked, but because she asked like Brad's feelings still mattered. "I needed to protect my daughter," I said. "Not your husband's reputation." Her jaw tightened. "You could have destroyed our family." "No," I said calmly. "He did that." Megan left without saying goodbye. That afternoon, a detective called. CPS had forwarded everything. With Ava's statement and the medical report, they were moving forward. Brad would be contacted. There would be questions. They asked if I still had the clothes Ava wore that day. I did. I sealed them in a plastic bag and put them in the hall closet, labeled and untouched. Evidence. The word felt surreal until I realized that's exactly what it was. By Friday, Brad had hired a lawyer. I wasn't surprised. Men like him always believe they can talk their way out, twist the story, paint the child as dramatic, the mother as unstable. By Sunday, the whispers started. An aunt called, her tone careful, almost sympathetic. "I heard something happened," she said. "I'm sure it's being blown out of proportion." I told her not to call me again. 2 cousins texted. One warned me that accusations like this ruin lives. The other suggested Ava might have exaggerated. "Kids do that sometimes," she wrote. "Discipline can be misunderstood." I didn't respond. I watched Ava instead. She wasn't crying. She wasn't panicking. She was quieter, thoughtful. She asked if she'd ever have to go back to Megan's house. She asked if she should explain things to Jordan. I told her she owed no one anything. School made things harder. Jordan told a couple of kids that Ava lied about his dad. One repeated it near the monkey bars. A teacher overheard and intervened. When Ava told me she didn't cry, she just looked exhausted. The next day, I sat across from the principal and explained everything. She nodded, said the right things. Support, monitoring, zero tolerance. But we both knew how rumors work. I wasn't backing down. 3 days after the CPS visit, Megan texted me. "Can we talk? Just us." I almost ignored it. I expected excuses, begging, pressure to drop it for the family. But something about the message felt different. Defeated. I agreed. We met at a diner halfway between our houses. Bad coffee, cracked vinyl booths, the kind of place where no one listens. Megan was already there, staring into a cup she hadn't touched. I slid into the booth across from her and waited. She didn't waste time. "I asked Brad to leave," she said. That was not what I expected. She swallowed hard. "After I left your house, I waited until he fell asleep. Then I went through his phone." My stomach tightened. She told me what she found. Messages to a coworker, screenshots of report cards, comments about Ava being a problem, a threat, a rival. "Real slapworthy," one message said. I felt sick. Then Megan said something I'll never forget. "I've seen him hit Jordan before." The air left the room. Twice. Once over spilled cereal. Once after a bad baseball game. She'd seen the bruise. She'd said nothing. "I thought staying quiet was protecting him," she whispered. I was wrong. I looked at her. "Will you testify?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes." And in that moment, I knew the story had just changed. The day after Megan agreed to testify, the tone of everything shifted. Not dramatically, not loudly, just decisively. Like the moment a door closes behind you and you realize there's no turning back. Megan called the detective first thing that morning. She didn't hedge. She didn't soften the truth. She told them about the messages she'd found on Brad's phone, the way he talked about Ava like she was a threat instead of a child. She told them about Jordan, about the cereal, the baseball game, the shove that sent their son into the wall, hard enough to leave a bruise she'd pretended not to see. She cried while she spoke, but she didn't stop. That afternoon, the detective called me. They wanted Ava to do another interview, this time with a forensic specialist trained to talk to children about trauma. I asked Ava if she felt ready. She nodded, quiet, steady. At the interview center, she sat with her hands folded in her lap, answering questions in her small, careful voice. She told them things she'd never told me. About how Brad isolated her from Jordan during visits. About how he joked that smart girls grew up lonely. About the time he locked her outside because she answered a math question faster than Jordan. About how he'd grabbed her wrist so hard at dinner that she dropped her fork and couldn't eat. I listened from the other side of the glass, my chest tight, my hands clenched so hard my nails left marks in my palms. When it was over, the interviewer said, "She was very brave." I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. Within 24 hours, a no-contact order was issued. Brad was barred from seeing or contacting Ava or Jordan. Megan filed for emergency custody. When Brad was served, he lost control. He showed up at the house screaming, tried to force his way inside. A neighbor called the police. He wasn't arrested that day, but the warning was clear. He was running out of room. I didn't wait on the system. I contacted another lawyer. We prepared a civil case alongside the criminal one. Megan handed over everything: emails, passwords, financial records. There was a recording where Brad laughed and said no court would ever believe her. She said she'd been afraid for years. Not anymore. The real shift came when Jordan spoke to the school counselor. He told her he never wanted to go back to his dad's house. He said he had nightmares, that he slept with his door locked, that he felt sick every time he heard Brad's car. That's when everyone stopped calling it an incident. It was a pattern. Brad tried to fight back. He filed paperwork claiming I was manipulating Ava, that Megan was unstable, that this was all exaggerated. Megan didn't respond. She forwarded everything to the detective and added to her statement. Then another woman came forward. An old friend of Megan's reached out. Brad had dated her younger sister years earlier. The sister described the same behavior: mocking, control, isolation, violence that never left visible marks long enough to photograph. She still had a notebook. Dates, notes, details. Our lawyer submitted it all. Brad grew desperate. One night, Ava answered a call on her tablet from an unknown number. It was him. He told her to say she'd been mistaken, that everything could go back to normal. She hung up shaking. I called the detective immediately. The number traced back to a prepaid phone. The next day, Brad was arrested for violating the no-contact order and attempting to influence a minor witness. The charges escalated: felony child abuse, witness tampering, aggravated intimidation. For the first time, real prison time was mentioned. I felt something unexpected then. Brad's arrest changed the way people spoke about him. Before, his name had been followed by words like alleged and misunderstanding. After, those words quietly disappeared. Investigators stopped being gentle. Lawyers stopped pretending this was a gray area. And Brad, who had always believed he could talk his way out of anything, started to unravel. He pled not guilty. Of course he did. At the arraignment, his lawyer painted a familiar picture: family tensions, a bitter sister, a confused child. He implied I was overreacting, that Megan was unstable, that everything had been taken out of context. The prosecutor didn't argue right away. She waited. Then she stood and began laying out the timeline. Calm, methodical, just enough detail to make the room go still. Security footage from a neighbor's camera played on the screen. It showed Ava walking down the driveway after leaving Megan's house that day, one hand pressed to her face, her steps uneven. The timestamp matched the urgent care photos exactly. Those photos came next, enlarged, clinical, impossible to explain away. Then came the phone call. The detective testified that the number Brad used to contact Ava was activated 2 days after the no-contact order was issued. He tried to disguise his voice, but Ava recognized him immediately. The judge leaned forward. "This call happened after the protective order?" "Yes, Your Honor." Even Brad's lawyer looked uneasy. Then the prosecutor introduced the sworn statement from the woman Brad had dated years before Megan. She described the same pattern: control disguised as concern, mockery framed as jokes, violence that escalated quietly. One sentence stayed with me. "He never yells," she said. "He just breaks you down slowly until you forget who you were." When Megan testified, she didn't defend herself. She admitted she ignored things she shouldn't have. She talked about Jordan's bruises, about the night Brad screamed at their son for striking out during a baseball game, about convincing herself that staying was safer than leaving. "I was wrong," she said simply. That was enough. 3 days later, the offer came. 10 years. Felony child abuse, witness tampering, intimidation, violation of a protective order. Parole eligibility at 8. Permanent no-contact orders for Ava and Jordan. Loss of custody. No loopholes. Brad's lawyer tried to negotiate. The prosecutor didn't move. Brad took the deal. I was sitting in my car outside Ava's school when our lawyer called. She was inside at robotics club, laughing with kids who didn't know any of this had ever happened. I cried quietly behind the steering wheel. That night, I told Ava only one thing. He's not coming back. You're safe. She thought about it for a moment, then asked if we could get pizza. We did. The day after Brad accepted the plea deal, the world didn't end. It didn't explode into celebration either. It just exhaled. I picked Ava up from school like any other afternoon. She climbed into the car, buckled her seatbelt, and immediately started talking about a robot her team was building. Halfway through the story, she stopped and looked at me. He can't find us, right? No, I said, he can't. She nodded, satisfied, and went back to her story. That night, Megan sent me a photo. Jordan stood in the driveway wearing a brand new baseball jersey, smiling in a way I'd never seen before. Not tight, not guarded, real. Megan wrote, "It feels quieter here." I understood exactly what she meant. The family mostly went silent after that. A few apologies trickled in, some sincere, some carefully worded. I didn't chase any of them. I didn't need closure from people who needed violence to be proven before they believed a child. What mattered was what I saw every day. Ava laughed again, loudly, fully. She asked to join mathletes. She slept through the night. She stopped checking locks that had never been locked in the first place. Jordan started sleeping with his door open. Megan and I didn't magically become close, but we became honest. She went to therapy. So did the kids. She handed me a folder one afternoon. Old notes Brad had written, lists, schedules, things that showed just how calculated he'd been. "Keep them," she said, "just in case." Ava met once more with a victim advocate. Afterward, we got milkshakes. She declared it the best one she'd ever had. My dad called a few weeks later. "You did the right thing," he said. "I'm proud of you." Brad is in prison now. His power is gone. No one is protecting him anymore. Ava has a wall in her room filled with awards. Pinned among them is a small note she wrote herself. "I'm not scared anymore. We came out of this changed, bruised, stronger, and for the first time in a long time, it's quiet. Not empty, quiet."